You have arrived at the Who Are We podcast. You can find us online at whoarewe.blog, Instagram at whoareweblog. Today, 7 must-read books. Published originally November 21st, 2020 at whoarewe.blog. 7 must-read books. The best recent titles for inspiration, motivation, and personal revolution. More information is published on just about any subject than ever before. As Tesla founder Elon Musk says, you don't need college to learn stuff. You can learn anything you want for free. I adore this piece of advice. There are 2 challenges when attempting to learn on your own. First, determining what's important, and second, clearing the static created by the barrage of available information. So we'll limit what's important to psychology, self-improvement, and insight. And let's just say the purpose of this article is to clear the static. In the last 5 years, print book sales have reached 650 million. Printed books maintain popularity over digital and audio versions of the same. 65% of adults in the U.S. have read a printed book in the last 12 months. Educational material has never been more in reach for humankind than in this moment right now. The following are 7 must-read books. These books will shift your paradigm, motivate, and inspire you. Number 7, Transcend, the New Science of Self-Actualization. Scott Barry Kaufman delves into the personal journey and research of famed psychologist Abraham Maslow. Perhaps the most interesting gem in this book provides that Maslow's hierarchy of needs was never intended to be a pyramid. The idea was not that you could not be actualized without food or shelter, or that when you were hungry and went without food, you couldn't experience love. The idea was hijacked by management schools as a gross oversimplification of Maslow's ideas. This book attempts to give Maslow's theory the nuance and depth it deserves. In a tireless effort, both into Maslow's research, finished and unfinished, and personal journals, Kaufman explores each of the ideas associated with Maslow's self-actualization, including safety, connection, self-esteem, exploration, love, purpose, peak experiences, and what Maslow referred to as Theory Z. The concept of self-actualization defined as the desire to become more and more of what one is, to become everything that one is capable of becoming. During Maslow's later years, he began to understand that self-awareness could lead to transcendence. Those self-actualized individuals that he used to exemplify his idea describe experiences beyond the recognition of themselves. Experiences transcended their own sense of self and ego. In what seemed a contradiction, these folks also had a strong sense of who they were at their core, exuded strong values and beliefs. This simultaneously perplexed and inspired Maslow. There appeared to be a phase beyond self-actualization. Maslow didn't get the chance to fully flesh this out in his lifetime. The book discusses D realm and B realm. The D realm, D for deficiency, refers to needs that come from a deficiency in shelter, safety, love, or self-esteem. These are called safety goals. In contrast, B realm referred to growth-related needs. For example, gaining wisdom, insight, and integrating life experiences. These are growth goals. Maslow used the B realm to describe what we refer to now as being present or in the moment. Ultimately, the choice between safety goals and growth goals may differentiate between the paths between self-actualization and transcendence. In sum, the book illustrates the possibility of a culture that takes care of the most basic human needs. Thus, humanity can actualize, growing to our full potential. Number 6. Everything is Fucked, a book about hope. Perhaps Manson is best known for his 2015 inaugural bestseller, The Subtle Art of Not Giving a Fuck. In this follow-up, Everything is Fucked, he has come into his own. The book simultaneously recognizes the insanity as well as the importance of hope in our lives. Anecdotes illustrating how hope drives us through tumultuous and uncertain times provides meaning and will very likely be the cause of human extinction. The concept of hope is examined from many angles, revealing its impact on humanity. From its function in cults and religion, to how it moves us to join political parties, to how we're inspired daily, individually. The full force of hope is undeniable. We find Nietzsche's concepts of master morality and slave morality. Master morality describes how those who have success and own the spoils of society feel they've earned it. Slave morality, on the other hand, recognizes that the average person is much like a slave to those who feel they have earned the success. For example, business owners, corporate presidents, etc. The tension between these two moralities exists in our society. Nietzsche warned that this tension would only grow. Sound familiar? These moralities are often used to inspire people to join one side or the other. Hope, used to divide. In Manson's estimation, hope is both the cause and the effect of what is wrong with societies of today and the future. On its face, it seems a bleak statement. Everything is fucked, and it has a lot to do with hope. Fucked is past tense, referring to that in the past, and hope calls to the future, and so implied is the importance of the present. There's a strange comfort in the Eastern-style idea of being present or content with your life in the now. A mind in the past is depressed and a mind in the future is filled with anxiety. Enjoy the now. Regardless of what we do, the future will inevitably bring our demise. There's a positive message to be taken away here. The book goes on to report that anyone offering hope is not doing so for free. There is a cost that is not always immediately obvious. We are sold hope to soothe our emotions. Pain is a constant throughout humanity, and so there will always be a market for hope in all of its constructive and destructive glory. Interesting ideas in this book, old ideas, presented in a fresh way, with a modern framework. A must-read. Number 5. Atomic Habits. Want to change your life? Change your habits. After all, your life is the sum of every little habit that you have. This is a wonderful nuts and bolts book on improving your life by James Clear. We've all been in a rut before where we knew we had to make a change, but we couldn't fathom where to start. Additionally, when faced with this challenge, the journey to the goal seems insurmountable. As Clear writes in several examples, throughout history, real lasting change has come from very small changes over a long period of time. In the framework of self-improvement, this is very small changes in our personal habits designed to enhance our lives. Clear teaches there are 4 steps in creating habits: cue, craving, response, and reward. These 4 steps were originally identified by Charles Duhigg in his book, The Power of Habit. Clear builds on the 4 steps with 4 laws. Number 1, make it obvious. 2, make it attractive. 3, make it easy. 4, make it satisfying. The nature of the talent needed to put these types of books together is in the supporting analogies. This is where Clear shines. Interestingly enough, motivation can't be counted on to fuel a habit. It is far more dependent on the environment. Several great examples of how this is the case are shared in the book. Habits that need changing begin by expanding awareness. The idea that bad habits are solutions to fulfill primal cravings makes sense. The reason we crave high-calorie food has to do with our desire or craving to sustain our life. However, we now live in an environment where this is not always healthy. Consequently, our access to high-calorie food is much greater than it once was. And so, the trick becomes associating healthier, low-calorie foods, to stick with the current example, with a positive experience. Ultimately, Clear support for the idea he puts forth is intriguing, commonsensical, yet not always obvious to most before the read. Number 4, outliers. I know. This one's not recent, but that's okay. It's relevant, and I've reread it recently. Leave it to Malcolm Gladwell to point out why innumerable successful people are in the position due to the system they came up in. At first glance, this may not be a very shiny idea. The book paints an image of the system of humanity at large, shining a light deep into our cultural unconscious. We are challenged to think more critically about how to see power and influence in relation to humanity. Gladwell masterfully and surgically approaches each success story, willing to disregard what we may naturally attribute as likely causes and instead posits that credit is due to something far less obvious. For example, Gladwell proposes the ethnic theory of plane crashes. In this theory, Gladwell hypothesizes that cultural circumstances made communication between air traffic control and a flight crew impossible, causing a deadly crash. The Power Distance Index, PDI, indicates the cultural disinclination to challenge authority was the circumstance at play. Because of a cultural difference in the perception of power and communication, a deadly and completely avoidable plane crash occurred. In the infamous 1990 Avianca flight from Colombia to New York, the failure of the co-pilot or pilot to challenge the air traffic controller's direction caused the disaster. Though both knew that fuel was running out, they would not bring it up. Even in this life or death situation, cultural norms and beliefs may have a large role in disasters. This and other less obvious ideas regarding success are also shared, including the 10,000-hour rule, the Matthew effect, and others. This book is known for turning common cause and effect assumptions on their heads. Number 3, Upstream, How to Solve Problems Before They Happen, by Dan Heath. I heard Heath on the podcast and was stunned at the beautiful simplicity of this idea. For Heath, it began when he heard this parable. You and a friend are having lunch by a river. Suddenly, you hear a child calling out as she or he is carried by the river. You jump in and save the child. As you bring the child to shore, you hear another child coming down the river. Your friend takes off running up the river, leaving the new child for you to rescue. Where is your friend going? You ask. Your friend tells you, I'm going to go upstream and stop the bastard who's throwing these kids in the water. As leaders, we're problem solvers. Yet we often become caught up in a cycle of reactivity. With our current knowledge and technology, we should be in a position where we can solve problems before they happen. Heath discusses the 3 barriers to upstream thinking: problem blindness, lack of ownership, and tunneling. The book would be interesting enough identifying these ideas. However, the book leaps ahead to dig into how what we are doing now to solve problems, or at least creating the appearance we're solving the problems in our organizations, public and private, just isn't working, and in some cases is making things worse. Thinking upstream is necessary. Upstream is a book requiring a bit of study and time. It is important the idea stay top of mind as we race into the future. There will be no excuse not to see some of the most trying problems humanity has ever dealt with. Number 2, Think Like a Monk, by Jay Shetty. Shetty brings the secret of the monastery to light in his book, Think Like a Monk. All of the simplicity of the monastic lifestyle applied to our hectic lives. The book shines in its simplicity and the everyday activity he provides to grow the concepts in our own lives. The book is divided into 3 parts. Part 1, Let Go. 2, Grow. And Part 3, Give. The first part focuses on the sense of self, negative emotions, and your intentions. One of the activities supplied are in this section involves identifying personal values. The activity asks you to make a note of the 3 people who you spend the most time. Of the 3, what values do you share with these folks? How important is that value to you? The second part, Grow, gets into our day-to-day, discussing routine. Very good, focused information here. If you're reading this, chances are you're on the periphery of some of these practices, and this middle section of the book will help you solidify some things you're circling. And finally, give. The way of a monk is to give. There are some simple, profound ideas in this final part. For instance, you don't have to have a lot to give. Many of us are waiting until we get to that point where we have excess to give. This is unnecessary, and often we never arrive. Give now. There's a large benefit to be had by giving to your community. If you don't have a community in mind, Shetty does some work to help you identify this as well. This book is truly great if you're looking for a modern book focused on improving your life and increasing satisfaction. The author achieves this by keeping it light, yet focused on old age wisdom that much of Western culture has left behind. Awesome book. I'll be picking through this one for weeks to come. Number 1, Green Lights by Matthew McConaughey. My first feelings about this well-told, adventurous, introspective, and inspiring book were that it was the everyman story. One of us makes it big. He carried our story with him. But something was off with that original view. There was something else. I got the audiobook. I listened to it on one day off. I was digging. What was it? I realized that the real beauty, and perhaps the secret to McConaughey's success, was the story he was telling himself. In one story from his childhood in the book, McConaughey describes a scene where his mother and father get in a brutal argument. Dinner tables were flipped, knives were drawn, blood was shed. Here's the decision point, the differentiator, and the theme I was working for. McConaughey could have told this story as a victim, from the point of view of a scared child, but that's not what's on the page. Instead, the story is told lightly and is used to illustrate the beauty and passion on how his family interacts. In the end, his mother and father, drenched in blood and ketchup, make love on the floor in the heat of their argument. The real idea that I was seeing working out in the author's life was the way that he was telling himself. The story was the key. McConaughey states in his stark phrasing at the beginning of the book, "I was never a victim." Many of us get the opportunity to decide how to tell our stories to ourselves. Many of us choose to tell the story with us as the victim or the martyr. No matter what happened in McConaughey's life, he was never the victim, and he only ascribed the most positive meaning. Really, this is the metaphoric green light, and perhaps the idea that we choose our perspectives on our lives. We may not all get the opportunity to write a memoir, but why shouldn't we? What story are you telling yourself? Hopefully, one with a lot of green lights. This has been an audio presentation from WhoAreWe.blog, 7 must-read books, the best recent titles for inspiration, motivation, and personal revolution. This is R.P. Watts. Thank you for listening.